43 games in a row without defeat for Corofin, chasing the 7 in a row against. They're going to be in the final against Tuam, who beat Moycullen. Do you actually think there's any hope of Corofin being stopped?
It's not in the evidence, you know. Like, I suppose so many times you see teams win the All-Ireland club and they have a bit of a dip that year, you know, maybe they struggle. But like the thing about Corofin is they're so used to their campaigns going long into February and March and still managing to get it up and get going again for the next year. And they just seem to be kind of a good bit ahead of everyone else in Galway. They also seem to kind of like, you know, kind of replenish the side every year. Like there's a couple of more young guys coming through. Different guys are becoming kind of, I suppose, bigger players for them. You know, we've seen Ian Burke and Kieran Malloy aren't that long out of under 21 grade. They're now the kind of main guys. They're still getting a lot out of players like, you know, Gary Syce, Jason Leonard's a big player for them. And I mean, you see they won on Saturday without Kieran Fitzgerald was out through injury, Michael Lundy out through injury, Daithí Burke wasn't involved. And okay, at the end it was 4 points, but you know, Salthill got a couple of late goals that put a bit of gloss on that. And they're just in a position of real strength now. And I'd say the 7 in a row is a big thing for them. And maybe further down the line, you probably think historically, I think they're on 20 titles at the moment. Tuam Stars are on 25. You'd imagine that's the I suppose the target maybe older people in the club might have of trying to reach.
You know the way you're talking about other players coming through, young players coming through. It seems to be, from what I hear anyway, that they roll into the new season and a load of guys go off playing with Galway. So that means plenty of lads actually get an opportunity to play lots of meaningful, we'll say, league games, which are like auditions for them, and play maybe some of the early championship games before, you know, the main men are drafted back in. But there's always going to be 1 or 2 guys who kind of step up and make a decent claim. Ronan Steed, anyway, he got a goal in the first half. It kind of made it 1-9 to 4 points at half time, and they were always going to win from there. But Tuam chasing the first title since 1984. So like they've won, like you said, 25 titles, isn't it?
25 titles, yeah.
7 in a row in the 40s or something. So a lot of them won historically.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just, like Gary O'Donnell is a name that people will obviously recognise, but it's not like that star-laden team that Corofin have.
Yeah, I think they lost to them in the 2011 final, and then they would have lost it to Salthill in 2012. So like they have that history and they have, I suppose, all their kind of heritage, but ultimately Corofin have kind of taken over. And I mean, look, you'd imagine Corofin aren't going to talk about this, but it's got to be a big thing in their mind. They could become the first side to win the All-Ireland 3 in a row this year. You know, look, there's big hurdles to get through to that because they have had a difficult in Connacht, whether it's been the, I suppose, Bridget's over the years from Roscommon or Mayo sides. So you'd imagine if they get out of Galway, they're going to have a couple of tests in Connacht. And then, I suppose, kind of looking further down the road, the interesting thing this year is going to be how the All-Ireland Club Series play out, with the fact the semi-finals are going to be just after Christmas. And then I think it's the 19th of January that the final is down for.
Well, it's an interesting point that you make about being the first club side to win 3 in a row. So we tried it with Coola in you know, we'd won it in 17 and 18, and then in the 18 club season, which would have led on to the 19 All-Ireland, we got knocked out in the semi-final. But I just reckon that the schedule of players going from club to county, over and back, that probably catches up to you to some degree. But now with this new thing of moving to the January All-Ireland, and therefore you'd imagine there's a bit more of a break with players getting a bit of time off before they play with their county. I wonder will it actually become more likely that a team will do it, even if Corofin fail this time?
Yeah, and I suppose the other thing is that, you know, when we're talking to kind of some of the older Corofin players like Kieran Fitzgerald and Gary Syce, and for a long time they struggled to manage the big break between Connacht and the All-Ireland semi-final, because the Connacht final can traditionally is probably maybe one of the first provinces to finish up kind of mid-November, and you're waiting then till February. And I think there was a couple of years, I think they lost the Gauls one year, Kilmacud another year, about 10 years ago now, and they did struggle with it. I think it was Stephen Rochford came in and really kind of turned it around for them, and getting over the line in 2015 was a big thing for them. So this may be a different challenge, the fact that you're not going to have that long wait, you're going to kind of roll into one. But the other thing I think about them is that for a side on paper, you know, we think that they're all packed with stars, and I suppose it's been a big bone of contention. Not a massive amount of them have made an impact with Galway, you know. I mean, I suppose Kieran Malloy has had a couple of injury problems.
They play beautiful football. In the last few years under Kevin Walsh, Galway have played fairly turgid football. Is it one of those things where different methodologies are clashing?
Yeah, I think that's part of it, and I also think, and you know, I maybe don't really blame him in some respects, Walsh's attitude, and he has spoken about this, is that it's quite difficult for them to come back in so late into the season, and you know, they're coming in kind of late to the game, and I think it's only kind of really maybe Liam Silk and Ian Burke have kind of made an impact. I suppose Gary Syce was there for a good few years, he's retired. You know, Kieran McGath played for Galway. Trying to think who else. You know, the Farrers had a go. obviously Kieran Fitzgerald kind of back in the day, then Bernard Power in goal, but that has been kind of viewed as, I suppose, a prohibitive factor for Corofin. And it probably goes back to one of the things I think is going to be great about this All-Ireland series now is that you're not going to punish guys for going long into the season with their club, because if they get to an All-Ireland final, they still have a chance to make an impact. You know, All-Ireland final ends on the 19th of January. You can celebrate for a few weeks, or you can commiserate, and then you can kind of come back in and have a go with your county in the league.
Missed the first few rounds of the league or whatever. But
at least you're not missing the whole lot of it, you know.
Even Declan Bogue did a piece a while ago, and he was talking about how Schlockneal, because their players are with the club, probably in both codes in certain years, that would have led to, well, at least part of the reason that Derry ended up down in Division 4 in the league, because they don't have their players.
Yeah, and they've got such a massive amount of them. And like, I suppose it was said last year by, I think, Porrick Davis in Longford, that from the outset, you know, it's going to be a big challenge for us because of Mullinock involved. As it turned out, they did really, really well. I think they started the league, they were kind of on top halfway through, but, you know, retained their Division 3 status. But it was viewed that if a smaller county, if a club does successful, you know, taking 6 or 7 club stars out of it, they just don't have the resources to fill in those replacements.
Like, it was a brutal weekend in terms of weather, rain coming in sideways, and Stephen Glennon was tweeting, arrived at Tuam Stadium, he's a journalist, and not admitted with press pass through the turnstile, told to walk around the downpour to the other side of the ground. This is a working day for me and I'm here sitting in wet clothes. # respect, decency. Rough enough, isn't it, for us?
It's what they say, the high vis, that I suppose that I suppose the power kind of gives that, you know, we've kind of spoken about over the years.
When
like,
you put on that high vis vest, all of a sudden you've got some power.
Yeah, there's a lot of stewards out in the country, you can see that, you know.
Yeah, well, he did say thanks to the steward outside for trying to intervene, but there's probably a few others that weren't.
Tuam Stadium, not the greatest spot as well compared to Pearse.
Yeah. Mayo Championship, so we're heading towards the final now. Ballintubber are going to meet Ballaghaderreen. So the semi-finals are at the weekend. Ballintubber beating Ballina 110 to 6 points, and Ballaghadereen beating Castlebar Mitchells 15 points to 8. So like, that was a bit of a shock, just the margin of victory that Ballaghadereen had over Mitchells.
Yeah, because like, it's been Ballintubber and Castlebar really dominated this decade. Ballaghadereen are actually the last side outside of that duo to actually have won it back in 2012. So I mean, like, on paper, you know, they do have a very, very good team, but it was just kind of the scale of the victory really kind of struck. You know, I mean, like, they still, like, you know, you obviously Andy Moran there. You know, you've David Drake has played senior. Cian Hanley, I suppose, is back from Australia. You know, he's had a couple of injury problems, but he's obviously going to be a big player at club level.
Shrozy
Akram and Seamus Cuniff were both on the Mayo 21 team. They won in 2016, so that's like a third-year side with inter-county experience, and it just seems that they got the matchups really well. And then I suppose, like everything, when you look at the club championships, there's guys that kind of pop out that wouldn't be as recognisable to us. But if you, Ryan Lynch and Cormac Doohan got 4 points each, so if you're getting 8 points from play, and I mean, they matched the entire total of Castlebar, so it sounds like it was a really, really impressive victory. And they won it, I think, in 08 and 12. So they won't lack experience in that regard. But I mean, Ballintubber probably going to be the favourites on the basis, I suppose, they won last year, and weather seemed to be really, really bad on Saturday night for that game in particular. But
Gavin got 1-1 there. Killian O'Connor got 4-3 from play. Alan Plunkett got 3. A few other lads popped up. Ballina just a point from play in the whole game. Mikey Murray got that 5 frees from Keane Tracy. So
probably says a lot about Ballintubber's defence, I think. Yeah. And I suppose the other thing for Ballina being back in the, like, they are the traditional powerhouse in Mayo football. I think they're the most successful senior club, but it was a big thing for them to get back this year to the semi-final, because they've fallen on fairly hard times of late. Big shock when they beat Brafey in the quarter-final. So, you know, they've had relegation battles the last couple of years, so I'd say to get back to that kind of semi-final stage. And they have guys like, I suppose, Kieran Tracy was kind of caught the eye for Mayo, didn't he?
Yeah,
early on in the year to start the league. I suppose like Jerk Hafke and David Clark are probably their older, more experienced players. I think Evan Regan only came off the bench. He's been struggling with injury, so probably a loss, and probably explains. But like, 1 point from play in a county semi-final, that really jumps out as a stat from that.
So Castlebar will always think back to that All-Ireland club title that they were massive favourites for against Ballyboden, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And just never got going.
No, and I suppose they also had lost 2 years before. You know, they could at least look back on that was like, I think one of the best displays I ever saw from Connolly in that game. Yeah, and they lost Richie Feeney early on a black card, but the Ballyboden one, yeah, that'll hurt. Like, just never got going that day.
The Sligo Championship, then we'll just stick with Connacht for a minute. Turlestrand beat Shamrock Gales 219 to 7 points. They're chasing a 4 in a row, Turlestrand. And Cooleristrand Hill 214, St Mary's 16 points. Mark Brandy rolling back the year, 6 points there.
Yeah, an amazing guy. He kept going for so long. I think he was he the oldest and or longest serving player there for. There used to be kind of a debate with the kind of likes of him and Paul Barden when they were coming back every year as guys. And I suppose maybe Andy Moran was another one who was the kind of longest serving inter-county player. Yeah, like Strand have been on top the last couple of years, but Sligo clubs just haven't really made an impact, have they? When they kind of get out of Connacht, it's been kind of Galway, Mayo, and Roscommon through Bridget's have really kind of dominated it.
It's going to be Carfin coming out of Connacht, isn't it?
That's you think so now. I mean, like Ballintubber have had a couple of goals off them. They lost last year and they lost the final in 2014, but there's been nothing so far to suggest this year that Carfin are kind of letting up in what they've done in Galway. And they're just so experienced in kind of managing any gaps that appear in the schedule and just kind of keeping their focus at all times.
Couple of well, it's going to be a landmark final in Derry in the football championship there, because O'Donovan Ross have beat Banagher 110 to 1-9, so that's their first final since 1983. Conor Cairns got the goal there, and Watty Graham the Glen, they beat Schlockneil 3-7 to 1-11. There was over 6,000 people in at the Derry Championship for just a single double header with the intermediate game and the senior game. And that's something you see over and over. Like, I don't know, is it especially in Ulster, but definitely up in Ulster, it just seems that it's so well attended.
I saw Carol O'Kane making this point last week. He was saying, like, looking at club games on TV around the country and seeing kind of sparsely attended, I mean, is there something about Ulster Club that seems to just attract? And I think it's true. I mean, like, you look at, you know, the home of the All-Ireland champions, you know, like the Nafina Ballymun game a couple of weeks ago, it doesn't really attract the big crowds, the club games in Dublin. Maybe the final does every now and again. You know, you see it in counties like, you know, Cork and Tip hurling. It's not massive crowds. There just seems to be something about the Ulster football, and in particular on those kind of midweek nights, you know, so all the Antrim semi-finals over the last couple of weeks that were on midweek nights.
Is it anything to do with, like, so up in the north when there was, or in Ulster when you had the troubles and all that kind of stuff, that people become so big into their identity and expressing it, that the club is such a huge thing and you want to go out and express your Irishness or whatever it might be. Maybe there's something to do with that just hasn't left, and especially because it's so recent that you would have had, you know, the troubles, etc. That I think that there might be something.
Yeah, I think that's a factor. I also wonder is like the fact that Derry has been going well the last couple of years, and when the county is generally kind of out in June and July, do people, because their club games are probably run off, you know, on a better schedule, that it's not always kind of, you know, congested together in a kind of a blitz, that there's more of a build up to the games and people kind of get more into it and rivalries are developing, and, you know, I suppose a lot of the best club players are focusing in on it, you know. And there's good storylines as well. I mean, like, for so long, say Ballinderry were dominating, Schlockneil coming was big the last couple of years. I think Watty Games have been dominating. Like, you know, there's these kind of Ulster minor tournaments, I think, are run in Antrim, and they've routinely been winning that.
Conor Glass was from that club.
Exactly, yeah. So I mean,
to
you think about, like, I think they've had 4 or 5 kind of guys come from the Derry 21s into the senior panel the last couple of years, and then they've lost what would be commonly regarded as probably their best prospect and maybe the county's best prospect, and Derry have lost a good few to the AFL over the last couple of years. So yeah, serious achievement, and I think they actually got hammered by Schlockneil in the league final not too long ago.
Right.
So that's a fair turnaround to come back and take them down in the county semi-final.
The Antrim Championship just seems to be full of replays. So the final finished Carrigan 110, Lough Jarrett 13, and Lough Jarrett needed 2 replays just to even get to the final. Not to mention there was a shootout after the first replay that the chairman came in and cancelled midway through. So they're going to have to go and do it again. Thomas McCann, he got a score at the end just to send it to a replay. I think
they're in a bit. I think the preliminary draw in Ulster this year has them in the first round. So I wonder, are they under a little bit of pressure that could be out in a couple of weeks? I think the Fermanagh champions are waiting for them.
Yeah. So there are so many replays all over the country. The Monaghan Championship. So just to mention the one that was decided on today, Clontibbert, they beat Latin 110 to 11 points. Desi Moan got the goal there. There's going to be a replay in Scottstown. They drew with Ballybay Pierces. That was 1-8 to 11 points. I saw Dick Clerkin tweeting, thrilling game between them, ended in a draw, extra time down to be played, but due to weather conditions, a replay was called. Another example of some good common sense being applied in the GAA these days. That's
good to hear. Like, I mean, if the weather was that bad and if they had the option, that they have the time for an extra week, because...
Do you think it was an option thing, or are rules been broken by a chairman just because he's like, common sense makes more... you know, is better than the rules?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I know there was
that happened in Antrim and Wicklow.
It was kind of brought up last week. Yeah, I think that's maybe a diff. You know, I mean, like the fact if the weather's really bad and that's a factor. Whereas I wonder is the Antrim and Wicklow thing, especially in Wicklow, was it like no one deserves to lose in this way. Yeah. Whereas maybe they're two kind of slightly different arguments. But But I think if the counties have the space, and if you know, if you're asking a lot for guys, whereas like you see it at the moment in like Tip Hurling is the prime example. I think the quarterfinals are on next weekend, and teams have been told if it's a replay, it's on the Wednesday night, and that's just an obvious, I suppose, result of the fact that the season went on so long for the senior hurling team and the under-20s and all that. Like, but I suppose a county like Monaghan that went out a bit earlier, like, you know, I think like that's the biggest thing I think about the clubs this time of year. I mean, I know a lot of people say bringing the All-Ireland finals earlier has had no impact, but I'd argue that it has, in the sense that more and more counties don't have to play week on week. And I think teams 2 weeks in club, if they can get a fortnight's break, I think that makes all the difference, because you know yourself, like you play a club game, you might have players, you know, working outside the county or whatever, trying to get it going again for the following week can be quite difficult. But I think 2 weeks in, it just gives you that chance to give it your best shot.
And even like as a club player, let's say you've got a really condensed calendar where you're going to have to play 4 times in 5 weeks or something like that. Get a hamstring injury, your entire season could be done.
Exactly, yeah.
Just for something minor.
And like there's been,
and that's probably in some cases because you have to play so many games together. So an extra week or two can make all the difference. Like
some of the instances of the last couple of years, I mean, I suppose Donegal was the main one, wasn't it, where they suspended everything until after the county. There's a couple of Ireland finals. I think one of the years Mayo got to a replay. Maybe it was 16. I think Ballintober had to play a game on a Wednesday night, and most of the Mayo players aren't based in Mayo. Like, you know, that's real hardship for club players.
Situations in April, and I've heard them this year in certain counties that, you know, there would have been maybe 2 rounds of club games played during April, and the county managers are trying to get them pulled, and they just. I mean, that's something that should be completely taken out of our hands, and every club should band together before the start of the new season and say, if it comes to April and a club manager or the county manager tries to pull them, everyone just rise up against the manager straight away and say, no way.
Yeah, I think you have to make a start in the championship. I don't think you can, I suppose, unless you're a very, very small county, you know, you see some maybe able to wait till August, but, you know, bigger counties, like you know, especially ones with dual considerations like Cork, Tip, Waterford, I think they have to get going in April. They can't be waiting around.
Waterford Championship then, so it was the semi-finals. Rathgormack were going to be meeting Ballinacurty in the final. Rathgormack 14 points, the Brick Walsh Stradbally 8 points. Ballinacurty, I think they had a good finish at the end, the 16 points, and the Nair won 9. Jamie Barron would be one of the players that I suppose people around the country would know, plays with the Nair. Carlow final then, Palatine got pasted 5 points, Éire Óg 116, so that's 3 in a row for Éire Óg. The Kildare Championship, Sarsfields beat Selbridge 9 points to 5 in one semi-final. Moorfield beating a tie in the other, so that was 210 to 111. So as the Kildare Nationals tweeted, for the 8th time since 2001 and first time since 2016, it's Newbridge rivals Moorfield and Sarsfields who compete in the Kildare final, and the Dermot Burke Cup will stay in Newbridge for another season. So
I think that's great.
Again.
I suppose looking at it from the outside, one thing I think about that is that it's great that you have 2 big successful clubs, or 2 big strong clubs from the one town. I mean, I see instances around the country. I suppose one of the big examples I always think is Portlaoise,
Thurles,
that size of a town. Thurles, there's huge examples in Cork, likes of Ballincollig, Carrigaline. They're big suburbs, you know, populations of between 10 and 20,000, and only having one club.
I should throw out Dublin as well. There's super clubs.
Kerry is probably one of the best examples. You know, like Killarney, there's 4 clubs, and there's 3 clubs, and there's another just outside the town. Tralee has 4 clubs. So like, it just seems a really good thing. I would think the fact that in Newbridge that you've, you know, I presume it's a historical development how they both came, but they both seem to be really, really strong. The fact that, you know, Moorfield going for 3 in a row, and then Sarsfields have won it in 2016, and you know, even the quality of managers they've been involved with them. You know, like you Ross Glavin and Jack O'Connor helping him with Moorfield the last couple of years. I think Ross Gavin actually still in charge of Moorfield, and then Davy Burke, the new club manager, is in charge of Sarsfields. You know, so
they were out at Abbottstown last week. They had, what was it, 4 points, or sorry, won by 4 points. 9-5 was 3 points each at half time.
I think the weather was supposed to be really, really bad in St. Conleth's on Saturday.
Yeah, so Queeveen MacDonald scored 3 points, Ben McCormick 2, and Barry Coffey 2. Paddy Brophy hit 3 for Selbridge, and then
Paul Kern was actually their manager, the Dublin All-Ireland winner.
Right, okay, and then in Moorfield against the tie, it was 1-9-4 at half time. So, I mean, that's a fairly sizable lead. And then Ian O'Connor grabbed a second goal after the break. Looking at the Armagh semi-final, so Ballymacnab beat Grainmore, another game that went to extra time, so that was 16 points to 13 at the end of that. Ballymacnab have never won a senior title. They lost the final to Crossmaglen in 2011 and 18. And I saw Neil McCoy tweeting, Jack Rugan kicking some exquisite scores for Ballymacnab in the Armagh semi-final here. really deserves a proper shot with the county. The other semi-final, Crossmaglen beat Mahary 2-9 to 8 points. Oisin O'Neill with a couple of goals. It was 1-4 to a point at half time, and looking for a 21st title in 24 seasons.
Yeah, it's extraordinary, you know. I mean, there was 2 years there they didn't go without it, and they seem to have just kind of, like, you look at what Rian O'Neill was doing this year for Armagh, you look at then his brother Oisin, so it looks like there's a new generation coming through. And you'd have to think that they're looking further afield. You know, like, it kind of struck me this weekend, like Shockneil going out in Derry, Kilcar would have been a big side in Donegal. I know Guido is still there. Scottstown, you know, pushed all the way in Monaghan, and they were last year's Ulster finalists. That Crossmaglen, you'd imagine they're going to have a big say in the Ulster race. I suppose Kilcoe are in the down final next week. I think they're a club that Mickey Moran's in charge of them this year, that have been kind of knocking on the door, but it kind of felt like a big weekend in Ulster. Well, the Ulster Championship hasn't started yet, but in terms of big teams being involved in various counties, you know. And
in the Donegal Championship then, like you mentioned, Guido, they beat Kilcar 3-8 to 12 points. Darragh O'Wheel, Eamon Cullum and Kevin Cassidy got the goals. And Naomh Connell just about saw off St. Eunan's 15 points to 111. I saw a tweet from Frank Craig as well. He was at some of the other games, and he goes, I think it was Grua against Clockaneely, and he said Andrew Mullen refuses to start the second half in Glenfin until the white Astra blinding everyone turns its full lights off up on the hill. Top road. That's what you have to love about the club.
You'd hear stories over the years. Was there one like, I don't know how true it is, like about the ref basically reffing the match from the car, like,
in Galway.
Was it in Galway? Yeah.
So wasn't it like he would indicate or blow the horn if it was a free?
Exactly. Yeah.
Use the indicators to say which way it was
and
going.
something about the flashing lights was another signal for something, like, you know.
Yeah, my father, I remember him refereeing a hurling match down home in Tipperary. And it started raining, so there he was in his pair of shorts, but he had a full massive Alex Ferguson type coat and an umbrella running around. Great stuff. The Wicklow football semi-final, as I said, this had gone to a shootout, but the shootout was cancelled. So Geraldines beat Blessington 3-6 to 110. Then in Clare, St Joseph's Milltown Malbay, they beat Doonbeg 116 to 112, and Kilmurray Bricken against Cratloe. So nice local rivalry for the final. Yeah,
it's brilliant. Like, I mean, I saw Derek Lynch, the Clare champion reporter, and he's from Kilmurray Bricken, called it the dream final, and I'd say there it is, because like they're right next to each other, and there's a massive rivalry between all those kind of West Clare clubs. I remember chatting to Owen Cleary before last year's Munster Club final, and he's gone on about Milltown Malbay growing up, and you'd see Kilmurray Bricken win Munster and Doonbeg getting the Munster finals, and I think Kilkee were the other club, so it was a big thing for them to finally get to one. But they won it last year and in 15, and I think it was in between then Kilmurray Bricken won the two. So two really, really big clubs, two dominant clubs, but they never met in a final. So you'd imagine that's going to attract a massive crowd over the next few weeks.
Yeah, Milltown Malbay were up well at half time, 13-5. Cormac Murray got the goal then, and that kind of sealed it. For Kilmurray's Bricken's win over Cratloe, Conor Cooney and Sean Collins sent off, so that obviously sealed their fate. It was interesting, like, obviously Cratloe were going for the double, and I saw that Colin McInerney scored a penalty, obviously a dual player. Rian Considine, who'd scored 2 goals last week against Crusheen on TV, he was playing. Must be so hard to just jump from court to court.
And I think, like, they're a brilliant club because they're an example that I think most of their players are playing for both. You know, you see it in Dublin, and you see it actually more in Cork with the big dual senior clubs.
There's almost nobody playing in both.
There probably might be a few more in Cork. Like the Bars were playing the senior hurling semi-final yesterday. They might have 5 or 6 that are playing both, but it's becoming harder and harder. But I think Cratloe, the players are kind of swapping from code to code. Now, I've just seen the highlight or the game in TG last week. Like, they looked in exceptional form in their hurling, and I think it'd be a big thing for them to try and win that hurling, because they've lost the couple recently. And Six Mile Bridge, there's a big rivalry there. But like it's got to be a bit of a factor and a bit of a help for Kilmurray Bricken the last couple of weeks. They were able to concentrate solely on this game, whereas Cratloe were jumping from good to good.
Yeah, just right, like even like Kilmacud Crokes, they won the football championship in Dublin last year. They'd been to the 3 previous finals in the hurling, and I think there was only one dual player.
Ross O'Carroll maybe the only one. Yeah,
I'm not sure that anyone else jumped over both.
Yeah, it's becoming harder and harder. But I think if guys don't play both, they don't have the numbers to sustain it, a challenge at senior level in both.
Also in Clare, this was a funny one from Owen Maloney. The Clare Junior B Football Championship has been won strangely on a walkover. Clondegad turned up, but Corofin Club, who previously stated that they couldn't feel the team didn't. Flann Enright kicked the goal to confirm the walkover. Strange scenes. It's actually not funny. It's more, it's just an oddity more so than anything else.
A typical bizarre conclusion to a GA championship at this time of year. There's a lot of times you see kind of below the senior grade stuff just tries to get wrapped up in whatever way they can.
The Longford final then, so you had Killoe, Emmett Oaks against Longford Slashers, 12 points to 11. So it's Killoe's first title since 2015, and they have kind of won the most this decade. Now, Moran had taken over, but Killoe have won 4 this decade. Very exciting finish here. It was Ronan McGoldrick, he fisted over the match winner 4 minutes into injury time, and Slashers had a chance to win it just beforehand when Robbie Clark got through for a goal, but Pádraig McCormick got back, and I think he prevented, and that was a 14-yard free instead, which was converted. Daniel Mimna was apparently immense man of the match for the second time in the county final, and they'll go on and play the Westmeath champions next. Any chance of a Longford team retaining the Leinster title?
Well, you imagine it'd have to be, when they see what one Lochte did, you know, it has to kind of drive them on a bit, doesn't it? Because it's not like that they're a new club.
They haven't done well in Leinster now, Killoe.
Exactly, and also you think that it's not like they're a new club who winning a county is huge for them. You'd imagine that, you know, they won, I think, what did you say, this is their 4th this decade, so that's got to be the next thing for them to kind of try to push on to do. And like that, I suppose that's the big thing we talk about with clubs like Monan when they come along. You know, it's like, what impact does it have? Like, you know, what way does it? Because there would be a lot of clubs in Longford would have thought that they were kind of at that level, like, you know. So you're looking at them and thinking, why can't it be us?
Kerry Championship this weekend, plenty of games going on. East Kerry 20 points, Cairns O'Reilly 3-9. St Brennan's beat Shannon Rangers 422 to 112, and Kenmare Shamrocks beat West Kerry 211 to 2-8. So we'll go straight to the East Kerry one. 8 points for David Clifford, and they're into the quarterfinals.
It's supposed to be a cracker of a game.
Yeah, like, it was 3-1 to 2 points early on.
Yeah,
and like if you look at the inside line of Jack Savage, Tommy Walsh, and Barry John Keane, you'd be thinking Cairns O'Reilly will go pretty far here.
Well, that's the thing, I suppose. You're thinking, in the context of this year's All-Ireland final, you're looking at Cairns O'Reilly's and just thinking of David Moore and Tommy Walsh. But I mean, Barry John Keane and Jack Savage were involved not too long ago, and at club level, those guys are going to be still at a really, really high level. But obviously, Barry John Keane got sent off and in the first half, and that seems to have been a big loss for them. Now, they actually went ahead, I think, in normal time, and it took a late point from East Kerry to draw level, and it got back to 15-15. That kind of, I always think it's one of the weirdest GA rules that it goes back to 15-15, whereas yellow cards do carry over. But it seems like David Clifford, he actually would have missed East Kerry's first game, because do you remember all the controversy last year in the county semi-final with Dingle? Himself and his brother were both suspended on the back of that game for this year's first round, but they're starting to move again now, and on paper they have a really strong team in terms of they've like a load of guys who won all Ireland minor medals over the last couple of years, like you've Jack Sherwood centre back, so you imagine, you know, they could kind of get moving now, and like that's a big win for them to come through there.
Being from Cork, where there are divisional sides, do you like divisional sides?
It's an interesting one, and like it's a big thing in Cork at the moment because of Emma Kelly's success in hurling and Duhallow in football. I think in an overall sense it is good for the county. Because
it brings up players that otherwise would be competing at a much lower level.
Exactly. I mean, like one of the prime examples, and it allows guys like Seamus Harnedy is a big example in Cork at the moment. His club are never going to get up to senior ranks while he's playing. They're a very, very small club, but he now is going for his 3rd county senior medal. But then what can sometimes happen in some divisions that take it seriously, it can just come along at a certain time if a few clubs get relegated. I know that's happened in East Kerry, and I know that's happened in East Cork with likes of Cloyne are no longer senior, Youghal are no longer senior. So that means out of nowhere now you've Paddy Sullivan and Bill Cooper available to you. So at a certain time it can be very, very difficult for certain clubs if the divisions are organised and if they get going in a bit of momentum. But it's still a very popular concept in both counties, particularly in Kerry. I think they kind of swear by it. Like, you know, I think it's I don't see it changing anytime soon there.
Yeah, and just a mention of Kenmare Shamrocks as well. Great comeback in that game. Paul O'Connor actually outshone Sean O'Shea. So.
You have to think that, like, for a senior club, that's some forward line. If you've Sean O'Shea, Stephen O'Brien, and Paul O'Connor was a Kerry senior not too long ago, you know.
And the final one we'll look at, we'd mentioned Crossmaglen winning 21 and 24 titles, but Jamie Clark, he's out playing for Naas and Gales in London, and in the London Championship, so the semi-finals this weekend, Tyrconnell beat St Kieran's, I should say, pretty handily, 111 to 5 points, but Naas and Gales actually lost to Fulham Irish 311 to 111. Won't be a shock to Fulham Irish, of course, but for Naas and Gales to have Jamie Clark, Quaylon Mooney of Down, and Conner Harrison of... is it Conner or Connor? It's a weird... Connaire.
Yeah, I was always Conner, not so sure.
Yeah, but to lose with those lads in your ranks at club level, it's a bit of a shocker, isn't it?
Yeah, well, on paper, I guess the thing is, like everything, you just, you know, wonder about their involvement, and I suppose how well a Fulham Irish been going and all that. Like, but certainly when you see those teams, even you see it sometimes if a London team is in the Connacht Championship, there's an automatic assumption they're going to go strong. Or even the times New York have been going for in the intercounty scene. It's like when there's big names, there's automatically kind of a heightened expectation that they're going to produce a stronger challenge and that they could maybe produce get the victory. But I guess kind of depends how well they're going and what sort of involvement these guys have had.
Right, that's it for the Club Football Chat. If there's any stories we missed out, feel free to let us know, and don't forget to follow the channel by clicking on that button just there.